DeeAnn Bragaw. For those of you who might not know me, those of you who perhaps are watching online a little bit disappointed that you're not seeing one of our three incredible pastors. I have the privilege of serving as the prayer ministries coordinator and the women's ministries director for Rocky Mountain Conference, which means that I just get to encourage people to pray and encourage people to serve, and it is the best job ever. The best job ever. Except the last 3 months. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? Well, I just want to tell you, I want to be totally transparent, completely upfront with you right now. Sometimes God speaks in a still, small voice. And sometimes I'm kind of a slow learner, and so he has to speak a little louder. And sometimes he has to really speak loud. And so this week, he really spoke loud to me. It was a really rough and rotten week. Because he tried to speak quietly to me and ask me if I really believed what I'm sharing with you today. And I was like, yeah. But then he spoke louder. And it wasn't fun, and it isn't fun, and it's been a rough week. But I am here to tell you, I am here to tell you with certainty that our God is faithful. Our God is faithful. And when we leave here today, we can leave here, yeah. Or we can leave here with just an extra spring in our step to remind ourselves through the power of the Word of God that He will always be faithful. COVID or not, riots or not, sickness or job loss or discouragement or not. God is faithful. Say that with me. God is faithful. Okay, now that on a scale of 1 to 10 was about a 2, so let's bump that up a little. Ready? God is faithful. I want you to look at the person next to you, and I want you to tell them like you're telling them something important, all right? Ready? On 3. 1, 2, 3. God is faithful. Yes, our God is faithful. Our God is faithful. He is the God that gives us certainty when nothing else around us makes sense. And I know that because of popcorn. Now, at our house, we like popcorn. In fact, my husband, Paul, affectionately known as Mr. B, Mr. B loves popcorn. In fact, we have some real dear friends who gave us this really cool popcorn popper. And so often, Mr. B will make popcorn and smoothies. Now, he doesn't just pop the popcorn. He puts a little of this and a little of that, and it is so good. Well, because he is the professional popcorn popper, he is the one who keeps track of when we need more popcorn, not me. We used to be able to get this kind of popcorn, that kind of popcorn, at Costco. But Costco had the nerve to stop carrying this popcorn. But lucky for us, Amazon carries it. And so every once in a while, Mr. B will order some popcorn, and it comes. One day, I got a very strange package in the mail. It was this. It was not popcorn. It was this. Can you just show us on the next slide? What was it that I got in the mail? I was like, I don't understand this. A hairless brush. It's a hairbrush cleaner. I thought, I didn't order that. I said, honey, did you order a hairbrush cleaner? He said, a what? What is a hairbrush cleaner? I said, well, don't ask me, but this came. He said, I didn't order that. I said, I didn't order that. And then the phone rang or something happened, and I set the hairbrush cleaner down on the little table next to the door. A couple of weeks went by, and Mr. B said to me, hey, did you put the popcorn somewhere? I said, well, honey, what popcorn? And he said, I ordered popcorn. Oh, I didn't know that. And so I said, I'm sorry, I haven't seen any popcorn. So we went on, sent a little quick email to Amazon, and Amazon sent us a little quick email back. They said, we show that this was delivered to you on such and such a day, and here's the number that proves that the popcorn was delivered to your house. We thought, well, that's strange. And all of a sudden, I started thinking about a hairbrush cleaner. And I looked at that package, and I looked at that email, and you know what? Same number. Same number. So you see, Amazon was certain that they had sent me some popcorn. I was certain I had not received it. And when I looked at that number and I looked at that hairbrush cleaner and they matched, I laughed. I took a picture of it with my phone, added it to my email that I sent back to Amazon and said, hey, by the way, I'm laughing. I hope you'll laugh too. And would you please send me my popcorn? I'm happy to send this hairless brush back wherever you want me to do, but in the meantime, could you just please send me the popcorn? And a couple days later, we got our popcorn and all was well. I hold out to you today that there is a lot to be learned from popcorn and hairbrush cleaners. Because you, like I, probably have had expectations in your life that things were going to go one way. You were going to get that popcorn, but instead, you got a hairbrush cleaner. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Wow. And so during this season that we have experienced with so much uncertainty, today we're going to focus on our women in our congregations. And we're going to just take a look and see some things that are really important to women during this time and beyond, thinking about what certainty really is. I was certain that hairbrush cleaner was not my popcorn. Amazon was certain they had sent it to me. Certainty. Now, some of us in this room have had a very crazy time lately. Certainty is a firm conviction that something is true. I know for sure that there are some things that are true. I loved the Band-Aid story, by the way, because I have a little Band-Aid right here on my finger, and I'm telling this story especially for the guys because you may be able to relate to this. One of my sons said that I could borrow his power washer to clean off our patio. I was certain that was going to be a really cool thing to do. I loved it. I am also now completely 100% certain that if you get your finger too close to the nozzle of the power washer, it will wash the skin and tissue right off your finger. Yeah, I am certain of that. I am certain that by the grace of God, there will be sunshine in the morning and sunrise in the morning and sunset at night. There are things of which we can be certain. But there are some things, some of us in this room over the course of the last 3 months have had some really weird things happen to us. For instance, we may have been full-time workers who then were not only additionally full-time workers and full-time mothers, but then we were full-time workers at home with children who were full-time students who are now full-time students at home, with husbands who were full-time workers who may be now full-time husbands at home, working at home. And we're trying to figure out, how do I make food for everybody? How do I get my work done? How do I keep all these 3 different kids on different Zoom calls at all the different time? How do I tell them to be quiet because my husband's got to do this work? It is so uncertain. I think I'll just go outside and lose my mind for a little bit. Now, some of you may not have been or are not in that particular era of your life. But you may be in the era of your life where you make a habit of going and doing gracious and kind, loving things for others. And suddenly, you are home and home and home. Some of you are healthcare providers or have healthcare providers in your family. And every day, the certainty that there truly is danger that is lurking, that you can't even see, that might not only affect your loved one, but might affect your family. And you get all of these different things on the news and you're trying to figure out, how do I keep my mind? Certainty. The firm conviction that something is true. Well, today we're going to take a little look through 3 chapters in Hebrews. Now, Hebrews is such a power-packed book. We're not going to be able to cover anywhere near any of the whole chapters that we're going to touch on these pieces in Hebrews. But as we look at them together today, I pray that you will be able to leave here firmly grounded, reminding yourself and others that what? What were those 3 words we said to each other? God is faithful. There is certainty in an uncertain world. Now, you know what? My head knows that, and your head knows that, until you get a hairbrush cleaner when you ordered popcorn. Right? Yeah. So let's take a look. We're going to start in Hebrews 12. And we're going to do something that's not a very good idea most of the time. We're going to take just a portion of a text. So let's just take a look at this text in Hebrews 12, verse 3. It says, "Lest you become weary and discouraged in your souls." Have you ever known somebody to be weary and discouraged in their soul? I'm not just talking about a bad day. I'm talking about weary and discouraged in your souls. And I hold out to you that I have a feeling that most of us, over the course of the last 3 or 4 months, have had moments of being weary or discouraged in our souls. Some of us had incredible times with our family, the trip of a lifetime planned, and those went up in dust. Some of us know of people who have weddings planned or other celebrations, babies to be born, all kinds of things to happen. And we have had those celebrations of life ripped out of our lives. And it's easy to become weary and discouraged in your soul. So what does that look like? Things like anxiety or depression, PTSD. I want to show you a graphic from a company that's called FSK. Our next slide, please. And you may not be able to see that real well, but this group started by some Harvard professors, and they do a lot of studies and then consulting with the information that they found. And this is some information that they found, ways that specifically women were adversely affected during our COVID-19 pandemic. Economically, there is a greater burden of domestic and care work on women than ever before. Much more. In fact, could be easily 30% more, which is a really tough thing, especially for a woman who may be working outside the home and now doesn't have that opportunity. There was a higher rate of job loss for women because, by and large, the service industries disproportionately employ women. There is reduced financial independence and future prospects for women. Then we move on to the healthcare system, an increased risk for frontline health workforce. 70% of the frontline healthcare workforce is women. Greatly affected women, greatly affected during this pandemic. Reduced access to vital health services. And then when we think about health and well-being, there is a risk of increased pregnancy-related deaths and teen pregnancies with all the kids home from school. Spikes in sexual, physical, and domestic violence and exploitation. Now, please do not for one moment, gentlemen, how grateful we are for every single one of you. We are so grateful for you, and I know that today's message, certainly remembering that God is faithful, you too have gotten a hairbrush cleaner when you ordered popcorn. But today, when we think about this and we think how this has affected women, we realize that there has been a huge loss, and I think that it's the loss of celebration. Now, with my job, which I dearly love, we were supposed to have a mother-daughter retreat, our first one ever. I just couldn't wait. It was going to be so much fun until it couldn't happen. We were going to have a women's ministries training weekend with all kinds of stuff to help women become better leaders in whatever capacity. And I was so excited about it until it couldn't happen. And right now, on a table in the foyer, is a little save the date flyer for women's retreat coming up the last weekend of September. And honey, I'm telling you what, I am praying that can happen. We went to a wedding that was supposed to be an incredible wedding, and it ended up being a wedding of 22 people. You know what I'm talking about. Now, guys, I love you. You know I do. I have the most wonderful husband in the world who is tenderhearted and loving and gracious and kind. And who's the one really who plans most of the celebrations at your house? Yeah. Most of the time it's not the guys, right? Yeah. And so we as women have experienced so many times of getting the hairbrush cleaner when we ordered the popcorn, and we do not know what to do with it. However, we have something very good to know. And that is that these belong on your feet. Now, you may not think that they belong on your feet because you're like, well, I know that Melanie, she's done a marathon, right? And Heidi, wow, Heidi, not only has she run a marathon, she's run the Boston Marathon. Did you know that? Heidi Sorensen's run the Boston Marathon. Right, Heidi? Hey, and Jenny does triathlons, along with a lot of other people. And some of you are like, well, good for them, sis, because you're not seeing me out there running. I'm here to tell you that if you believe God's word is true, you are already in the race. And you need to get these on your feet, and you need to get them on in a hurry. Because this race is not a little stroll in the park. It's not just a couple of nice laps around the track. Now, one thing that I did enjoy during this COVID thing is we live not too far from Lorraine and Ben, and a lot of times we would see them out walking, and we were out quite a ways from home. We'd see each other out there. We were going to do this. But God has said in his word that you and I are on a race. He does not want us to become weary and discouraged in our souls. Now, I have a son. He went over here to Campion, graduated from Campion, and while he was going to Campion, he ran cross country with Loveland High. I didn't know anything about cross country. And so I get there for the first meet, and I see all these people, so many people. And you know what happens when the gun goes off? Everybody runs at once. Now, Ben had run track at another place, and that's just so nice. You have the 8 people, and they go, and maybe you've got the relay, so you've got, but there's just all round and round. No, cross country. Bunches of people. The gun goes off and everybody is running all at once. I was like, whoa, I hope my kid will be okay out there. The Bible lets us know that we are in an endurance race. This endurance race is not for the faint of heart. There are hills, there are valleys, there are potholes, there are mud puddles, there are tree roots, there's all kinds of stuff to trip you up. And so God says, listen, I want to let you know what you're up against. And let's just take a look at this verse together. This is the beginning of Hebrews 12. Read this out loud with me. Therefore, we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us. Now, I know a lot of you out there have run in a race. Who's run in any kind of a race out there? Who's run in a race? Yeah. Anybody out there start a race early in the morning, like you had to be at the starting place early in the morning? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Now, when you got there, you likely had on your sweats, you had on your jacket, you might have had on a hat, you might have had on some gloves. You were surrounded. It's real fun. And this word in the Greek, when it says cloud of witnesses, it means crowd, actually. So we're surrounded by this crowd, and here we are waiting for the gun to go off. But when the starting gun goes off, do you still have on your sweats and your jacket and your hat and your gloves? No, you do not. Why not? It holds you back. And so God's like, look, we are on a race. This is an endurance race. There's a big crowd and they're all going together, and I want you to know that you need to do something. You have some stuff to leave behind. Anything that trips you up. Now, you know, for women, we do not even realize how little by little we get this backpack before the endurance race. And it starts when we're little girls, and there might be a brick in there of challenges to our self-worth. And then we get a little bit older and we're just, maybe there's a brick in there of rejection. And then we get married and we have children, and then there's just this big brick and maybe 2 or 3 other bricks of guilt because I'm trying so hard to be a good mom, but surely, oh my goodness. And we have bricks of regret, and pretty soon we've got this backpack on, and we're there. And Jesus says, no, I want you to leave behind the things that are tripping you up and anything. And this is what I want to tell you 100% honestly that Jesus spoke to my heart this week. He said, you know what, you're going to get up there and you're going to talk to people, but there's a little something going on in your life that you need to take care of before you tell my people to lay aside the sin that so easily ensnares them, because there's something wrapped tightly around your feet. And I'm so grateful for his forgiveness, so grateful. But as we take a look at this and we think about running this race, here we are. So we said the Bible started there in Hebrews 12. Therefore, we're surrounded by this crowd of witnesses. We are going to run this race. And just by the way, before you run the race, take off those sweats, take off that jacket, throw off that backpack, because you are going to need to run this race. How? Let's take a look at the next verse. It says, read this with me. And see that word endurance? When you read endurance, don't just say endurance, okay? Ready? Here we go. And let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. Doing what? Looking to Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith. What's an author do? They write. Jesus is the author of your faith story and my faith story. And do you know why he wrote this faith story? It's because he wants, I can't believe it, but he wants my story to somehow inspire you. No way, that cannot be. But it's true, he's the author. Now, if I'm the author of the book, who gets to decide the storyline? Me. If I'm the author of the book, who gets to finish the story? The author does. And so I don't care if you ordered popcorn and you got a hairbrush cleaner. There is someone who is writing your story. He started it and he is going to finish it. And you know, I just think it's so cool to think about Jesus as being my running coach. Now, those of you who are just like, yeah, I'm not a runner. Oh, yes, you are. The Bible tells you that you are. And I want to just share with you something that Mike Walker, an accredited coach who also covered track as a journalist, he said, you know, when you're getting ready to do this course, it's very helpful to know the broad strokes of the course. He talks about what he would do. We'd often bring a course map to make sure we were getting it just right. Sometimes that meant hunting down a race official and insisting that somebody help us understand the course. You especially want to know where the hills are, which sections are likely to be tricky, and where the fast portions will be. The last half mile is important to know ahead of time because many races are decided in that segment. And then he goes on and he says, rather, knowing the course helps a lot with mental preparation. See, a lot of distance running and racing performance is in your head. It's extremely helpful to have made your hard decisions, the suffering decisions, and your strategy for tackling the course in your mind's eye before the gun ever goes off. Now, if you think about that in spiritual terms, and you think about the incredible coach that we have, isn't that amazing? A lot of distance running and racing performance is in your head. It's extremely helpful to have made your hard decisions, the suffering decisions, and your strategy for tackling the course in your mind's eye before the gun ever goes off. And you know what? You and I can do that. You and I can do that because we can look to Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith. And how do we know, and why is that important? Let's look at our next one together, our next verse together. This is the continuation of Hebrews 12. Read this with me. Who? What's the who? Jesus, right? Who, for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross. He's already been through this endurance race. Read on with me. Despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Now, you know what? I'm not the girl who's going to go out there and run the 5K over the hills and valleys and the in and out and all do that. I mean, I've done some tries and they were a challenge and that was exciting. But wow, when I watch people do cross-country races, I'm not so sure I want to do that. And yet the Bible tells me this is where you are. This is where you are. Pay attention. The Bible tells us that Jesus did this with joy, and he did it with joy because he knows that you and you and you and I are going to sometimes order popcorn and get a hairbrush cleaner instead. And we are going to become weary and discouraged in our souls because we do not get it. And day after day and Sabbath after Sabbath, we will join together and we have on this game face that says, yeah, I'm faithful. I believe God will do this. And yet at home, we're like, then why do I have a hairbrush cleaner? Do you know what I mean? But Jesus, for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross because he knew that you and I were going to be on this course, and he already knows it. He already knows it. He has been over it. Well, we need to look to Jesus so we won't take a wrong turn. Good coaches make sure that their runners know what that course is going to look like. And we've got the best. We've got the best. And so there in Hebrews 12, it tells us, look, be real careful lest you become weary and discouraged in your souls. And you know what? There's a way for that not to happen, because you're surrounded by all these people that are in this race with you. And the best news of all is that we can look to Jesus because he's already been over the course. And then we're just going to flip back one chapter back to the chapter that you know well, Hebrews 11. What's this chapter known for? Yeah, it is the Hall of Fame of people who were faithful. But did you know, and today when we sing our ending song about faith, I want you to make sure that you pay attention to the first words in that song. Because that song was written because of Hebrews 11. And if you take a look at what Hebrews 11 says, it talks at the very beginning about what faith is. So what does it say that faith is? Depending on the version that you read, it says faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for. Faith is the confidence in what we hope for. Faith is the realization of what we hope for. I tell you that faith is certainty. And as we think about Hebrews 11 and we read about these people in Hebrews 11, did you know that you are in Hebrews 11? Did you know that? Let's take a look together at Hebrews 11:2. It says, Hebrews 11:2, let's take a look at that next slide, please. By faith, who? We understand that the entire universe was formed at God's command. Anybody out there believe that the entire universe was formed at God's command? Now, you know what? If you don't have your hand up, we need to talk, because you probably have some very interesting viewpoints. But I'm here to tell you that the Bible makes it clear, and if we believe what God says, we are in the Hall of Fame of faith. Did you know that? Is that just the coolest thing ever? By faith, we understand. And I just love this. It's just the coolest literary device that goes through here that just says by faith, by faith, by faith, by faith, by faith. And the first by faith is by faith we. And you know what? Then it goes through a whole lot of people. So interesting to me, all the people it goes through. Several men, several women. Now, in this book of Hebrews 11, in this chapter of Hebrews 11, it points out all the good stuff about these people, which is always the best way to look at people. And sometimes, when I hear how good you are at something, and I know that I'm not that good at something, what happens down here? Weary and discouraged in your souls. So let's just take a look at these people that we run through when we think about faith being certainty. I am certain that I can trust God. These are people that trusted God. By faith Abel, by faith Enoch, by faith Noah. Well, you know Noah. Sure enough, he built that ark. He saved the human race. Did you know that Noah had a little alcohol trouble? It's a very interesting story about Noah. Then Abraham, good old Abraham. Abraham, the father of faith, who we are told in no uncertain terms lied on more than one occasion to save his skin. Slept with his wife's maid because he couldn't wait for God to answer his promise. Oh yeah, there's Abraham. And what about Sarah? Sarah. So beautiful that even in her years that we would consider elderly, she turned heads. Sarah. So beautiful, so wealthy, she could have anything she wanted except what she wanted the most. And so she thought, well, you know, I know God said this, but perhaps I should help him a little. Perhaps I should help him a little. She laughed at God. Sarah. And what about Jacob? He had some pretty big family challenges. And Joseph, awesome Joseph, that we love that story about Joseph. And kids, I want you to know Joseph is a guy that we need to learn his story and follow. But did you know what? Joseph was a spoiled, rotten brat when he started out his story. Right? Look at these people in the Hall of Faith. Then we have Jochebed. So first we have Sarah, beautiful Sarah, who has everything. Now we have Jochebed. It talks about by faith Moses' parents hid him. Jochebed. Jochebed who had nothing. Jochebed who was a slave, who did whatever she could do just to save her baby's life. She is in the Hall of Fame. Moses, then there's Moses. Yeah, he killed a guy. What about Rahab? The Bible makes no bones and continually calls her the prostitute that was in the lineage of Jesus. And so when I look at all these people that are heroes of the faith, these are the people. And as the author of Hebrews was writing this, he had the Old Testament to go by. But of course, we can look at all of our New Testament heroes, and we can look at all of our recent heroes. There are so many people that are heroes of the faith, people that are part of that great crowd that's with us. And you know what? They are just like you and me. Sometimes they ordered popcorn, and sometimes they got a hairbrush cleaner. Sometimes they were faithful to God, and other times, not so much. And this gives us hope and courage, because when it said that we were the ones, the start of the faith chapter, and then we read down through these people and we realize that all of these people are just like us. They are on this endurance race. They had trail runners. They were out there on the hills and the valleys. And do you know what they had to go by? They had the promise. And that promise, I should do it this way for you. They had the promise, and the promise they were looking forward to, the promise of the Messiah, the promise of the one who would send popcorn and not a hairbrush holder. And then it continues on, it continues on, it continues on, and we are on the other side of that. And instead of looking forward to the Messiah, we get to look back. And we say, wow, he is a promise keeper. He is a promise keeper. So what did all these people do with this faith they had? The Bible says they subdued kingdoms, works righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword. Out of weakness were made strong, became valiant in battle, turned to flight the armies of the enemies, and received their dead raised to life. And you know what? You and I belong in that chapter. I do not know what the last 3 months of your life has looked like, and I don't know what the next 3 months of your life are going to look like, but I know this, that God is faithful. He is the one who has been over this endurance race before, and he's the one to let you know where those potholes are, and he is trustworthy. So now let's just pop just a little bit back. So we started in Hebrews 12, and that was sort of a weird place to start. We started in Hebrews 12. We said, lest you become discouraged. But you know what? You're surrounded by this crowd of witnesses. And this crowd of witnesses is the people that are running this endurance race, looking where? Looking to Jesus. And then here we are with all of these people in Hebrews 11 that we're looking to Jesus. And then we're just going to flip back to Hebrews 10. In Hebrews 10, it says, let us hold fast to the profession of faith without wavering. For, read that with me, he is faithful. So in Hebrews, the writer of Hebrews is letting you know, Hebrews 10, he is faithful. Here's all of this story of all of these people who were people just like you and me, broken people, and yet they are in the hall of faith, not because they were so good, but because he is so good. And then we get over to Hebrews 12, and we find out in Hebrews 12 that the one who's the author and the finisher of our faith, he is the faithful one. Now, I think a tricky thing for all of us is to say, I want more faith. And so we determine that we're going to be faithful. But the Bible makes it so clear that the faithful ones are the ones who let he who is faithful be in charge of their lives. And as a result of that, something else happens. And this is what it tells us. It says, let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good deeds. Now, our first Sabbath back, I loved Pastor Getz's sermon. Michael, that was just awesome. He talked about what a Sabbath to come back. He talked about how, of course, we had had all of these challenges. And as if that wasn't enough, Satan was there just stirring up the pot to figure out what else he could do to divide us and discourage us. And he gave us hope for another way, looking to Jesus. And the Bible here in Hebrews gives us hope too. It says, look to Jesus. And then it says, you know what? Stir something else up. I want you to stir something up. I want you to stir up love and good deeds. And that's exactly what women's ministries is all about. It's about women encouraging women to stir up good deeds, to stir up love and good deeds in our homes, in our churches, and in our communities. The Bible tells us then, as we flip back then to Hebrews 12, that there's something that we need to do. And that's something that especially we need to do right now. Have you ever seen anybody that is running a race, and all of a sudden you see this? What does this tell you? Pretty tired, right? Exhausted. In fact, I love Craig Keener. He has a very interesting thing for us. He tells us in one of his books that talks about the New Testament that athletic contests were a common image in Greco-Roman literature, often used for the moral battle waged by the wise person in this world. This passage here in Hebrews is the climax of the narration of past heroes of faith. And it tells us that the verbs that are here that we see are the verbs that are used to let us know that someone is absolutely exhausted. And so God says, I have a job for you, girl. I have a job for you. There in Hebrews 12, it says to strengthen those hands which hang down and the feeble knees. You see people figuratively all around you that are exhausted. Their heads are hanging down. Their hands are on their knees. Their knees are bent. And it's your job and mine to do exactly what it has told us to do, to strengthen the weak knees. I want you to take a look. I love this. Just out of the Message paraphrase, I want you to see how it's put here. So let's just take a look at that next one. It says, clear the path for the long distance runners so that no one will do what? Trip and fall. So no one will step in a hole and sprain an ankle. Help each other out and run for it. Run for it. You and I. And you know what? I see that in this congregation. I have seen people who take meals to others. I have seen people who help people move. I have seen people who do quiet things in the background. I have seen people pray. I have seen people visit the lonely. And not all that long ago, a very interesting thing happened. When we were at the height of the toilet paper crisis, one of our teachers at HMS went shopping. Now, they had just gotten to Walmart, and they had just gotten a shopping cart. And someone came dashing over to them and ripped the cart right out of their hands and took off with it. And they, of course, were quite startled. This story somehow morphed into something unbelievable. A couple of days later, I got a text, "Are you okay? We heard what happened." I was like, am I okay? We heard what happened. I had no idea what they were talking about. I said, "Honey, do you know what this means?" And he's like, "Not quite sure." And then more people asked, and people asked Paul, and this is the story that we found out happened to us, that I had been at King Soopers, and I had a cart full of groceries that I had already paid for. And I was going out to my car, and someone came, and they ripped my cart out of my hand, and they ran away with it. That's the story that someone else heard. Well, of course, I had to giggle a little when I heard that, until the next day when in the mail we got this beautiful, thoughtful, anonymous card that said, "We want you to know how much we appreciate you and your ministry here. Here's a $100 gift card to King Soopers. I hope this helps what you lost." This is what ministry for every single one of us looks like. We strengthen the feeble knees. We make it possible so someone else does not trip and fall. And I do want you to know, whoever you are, that was the sweetest gesture. It made me cry. Just to think that you would think so thoughtfully of us. And of course, we immediately gave that gift card to Teresa so that somebody who truly needed it can have it. I want you to know that if you ever hear this story, just know that, I didn't go buy popsicles. All right, but here we are, and our job is to clear the path. Our job is to make it possible for people who are having a tough time to make it. Christina Seymour, who wrote the Warrior Mom Handbook, said this: "The battle's really not about me and my exhaustion. It's about others who may be disabled physically or spiritually, who God has called me to fight for. I know that if I surrender and quit mid-battle, many people that God wants me to encourage will never receive that life-giving encouragement." And so you and I, friend, we are in a race. We are called to strengthen the weak hands and the feeble knees. We are called to be people of faith. We are called, even if we don't think trail runners are our thing, to put them on and run this race. And as our praise team comes back up, I want you to take a look at this verse and read it out loud with me. Our next verse. It talks about what God wants us to do. Oh, sorry, let's go on a little farther here. We're going to skip that. A little more, please. If we want to keep our eyes on Jesus, you can go ahead and come on up. If we are having a tough time in this journey, if we're growing weary and discouraged in our souls, this is the beginning part of that verse. Read it out loud with me. "For consider him who endured such hostility, lest you become weary and discouraged in your souls." Chapter 10 tells us, look to Jesus. He's the faithful one. Chapter 11 talks about all of these people like you and me who were found faithful, not because of what they did, but because of him. And chapter 12 says, look, if you're getting discouraged, if you've ordered popcorn and you got a hairbrush cleaner, consider him who endured such hostility, lest you become discouraged in your souls. As we sing our song here together, our closing song here together, I want you to take a look at these words, because these words are not words that were just thrown together. They are words directly from Hebrews 11. Let's sing our song together now.
By faith we see the hand of God in the light of creation's grand design, in the lives of those who prove his faithfulness. We'll walk by faith and not by sight.
I am so grateful for Jeanette and her team with women's ministries here at Campion. Out in the foyer, I encourage you to please take a moment and stop by and talk with her. There are opportunities for you, ladies, to be someone to stir up faith and good works. God has called us to spur one another on. And together, we, this crowd of witnesses, has the opportunity to reach out to the world around us. We have the opportunity to say, you know what? I don't care if you got a hairbrush holder. Our God is faithful no matter what. That's what we're called to do. That's what women's ministries is all about. And so please take the opportunity to find ways that you can serve in our church and in our community for the glory of God, the one who has endured and who will never leave you. Now may the God of peace, who brought up our Lord Jesus from the dead, make you complete in every good work to do his will, working in you what is well-pleasing in his sight through Jesus Christ. To him be glory forever and ever. Amen.